so excited to jump into a really amazing conversation. We don't really know where it's going to go, but it's going to be good. I can tell you that. So could you give us just a little bit of an introduction into who you are and what you're about, and we'll just take it from there.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. And it's awesome to be here and to chat with your listeners because my journey has not been a straight line. That is for sure. I started out my career as a nurse and in a roundabout way ended up in anesthesia. And through anesthesia, I got in touch with a little bit of mind, body, spirit. A taste of that world and how my patients were affected by that. And just on a fluke of coming across some research, got interested in hypnosis. And once I explored that and actually worked with clients and had personally experienced what was possible when I was in my training, I knew this was where I was meant to be, was to be a hypnotist. All those years of education and training and college degrees to be a hypnotist. And I just absolutely love it.
I love that so much. And you already know that I am obsessed as well. I really think it's like the most powerful tool for change in our lives that is out there, that exists out there. So I'm sure there are still some people out there, because I've come in contact with them as well, that kind of still think, and I've spoken to this on the podcast before, but kind of still think that a hypnotist and hypnotherapy is like you get on a stage and you make people like balk like a chicken, and and you and I know that's like, yeah, that's like its own whole other thing. So can you tell us specifically from your perspective, so maybe like just kind of like dispel a couple of the myths and then talk about how you use it and why you think it's so powerful.
So probably the biggest myth out there is that it's a loss of free will. And it absolutely is not a loss of free will. Your conscious mind is still aware. People can take themselves out of hypnosis at any moment if they choose. It's a consensual process. Now, some people will say, hey, what about conversational hypnosis? Well, we're all suggestible to a degree, even if we aren't in hypnosis. And we all kind of blend in and out of our focused analytical state into that, what some people call a lighter stage of hypnosis, or a slightly more suggestible state. We're kind of cruising that wave all day, depending on whether you're scrolling Facebook or you are watching TV or driving. You're kind of in and out of that state. So the loss of free will seems to be the biggest piece for me that I see people have concern about. So when it comes to conversational hypnosis, that's more about persuasion and influence. And when people choose to read and they become engaged, it's still a consensual process, even if it's built through rapport. No one can take you and make you read a sales page or make you watch something on TV. You choose to do it. So, but within hypnosis itself and what I do, I find that number one, once people realize it's not a loss of free will, that they can choose to go into or out of hypnosis at any time, that's a huge piece of it. I have no control. And based on your beliefs and your morals and your ethics, you're either going to accept the suggestions that I give or you're going to reject them. That's why there's very rarely you see something in hypnosis that you can solve in one session, because you're dealing with the subconscious. There is no control over your beliefs. That is something that is inherent within you. So free will is a big one. And then the other one is can people get stuck in hypnosis?
Mm.
And hypnosis is simply that state of mind that you pass through just before you fall asleep and as you're waking up. So we automatically, naturally go into that state. And I love to use this example. It's a little bit extreme. But if I were to have a client here in my office, in my chair, and I had them in hypnosis, and something were to happen and I were to pass out and fall out of my chair, they're either going to hear that and say, "What was that?" and take themselves out of hypnosis, or they're going to fall asleep. One of the two. They're not going to be stuck in
Right.
hypnosis. So I think
And
those are
even if they
probably the
fall
two biggest.
asleep, they'll wake up when they're ready to wake up. Right. Yeah.
Just like they fell asleep at home.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There was a movie years ago where that happened, right? Like the hypnotherapist fell asleep or no, died, I think, right? Wasn't it like
I don't know. I have which movie? I
I
missed this.
I think it was I want to say it was a movie where the guy was like working and it was like I think it was the one where he's like, "You got a case of the Mondays." Everybody listening right now is like, it was that movie." They're like saying it. Something about something about work. What was it called? Anyway, it was a comedy, and the guy is like in hypnosis, and the therapist dies, and then he's like stuck in hypnosis for the whole movie or whatever. And it's like,
Oh my
like
goodness.
that's where this bogus stuff comes from. Is like movies I feel like have done hypnosis a huge injustice.
Exactly.
Yeah. So those are
Exactly.
two really, yeah, that's so interesting. And so with your background and being a nurse and then an anesthesiologist, I didn't say that word correctly, but then like kind of moving into this world, like what was it that sort of like was the bridge, like what bridged that gap for you? How did hypnosis bridge that gap of going from one world to the other? Like why hypnosis?
So when I was a newer nurse anesthetist, I worked at a small community hospital in Eastern Connecticut, and they had something called the CHI Center, the Center for Healthcare Integration. And occasionally I would have patients come through that the morning of their surgery, they had had healing touch or Reiki,
Mm,
or they had followed a protocol called Peggy Huddleston's Prepare for Surgery, Heal Faster. She wrote a book on it.
mm,
And so they would come in with this piece of paper, and as you gave them the medications that induced anesthesia, and then as they were awakening from anesthesia, you would read these positive statements to them. And I
mm,
noticed that these patients took less pain medication. They were more awake when we were finished, and overall, they just kind of moved along quicker and they felt better. And I thought, well, geez, what is this? And then there were some other incidents that happened at the hospital, and I was thinking, you know what? The nurses here didn't learn about pain because, I trained myself as an RN before I became a nurse anesthetist. There are a lot of things I learned as a nurse anesthetist about pain that would have benefited me
mm,
as a nurse.
mm,
So I started to develop a continuing education course for nurses around pain.
mm,
And when I did the research on the piece for complementary alternatives for pain relief, I came across the medical research for hypnosis. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is interesting. And a few years go by, and I managed to find a training that was put together by another nurse anesthetist. And I took that training, and each day he would call up a volunteer for a demonstration. And the day that he called me up was the day that he demonstrated what we call glove analgesia.
mm,
I don't have my clamps right here, but basically, um, I followed his instructions. He induced a deep state of hypnosis, and then he gave me suggestions that my hand was numb, and he clamped a surgical clamp shut on the back of my hand. And I heard the snap when he did it. And because I worked in the OR, I knew exactly what he did. And
mm,
I knew I should be feeling an intense amount of discomfort. And I
mm.
felt nothing. And I
Wow.
was like, oh my. I took the course out of curiosity and I left determined to have a practice.
Wow.
And I was like, why don't people, why aren't we taught about this? To educate our patients so that they can have some control over how they feel.
Mm.
And that's kind of how I bridged from anesthesia into hypnosis. And I had a practice in Connecticut. And then, of course, life happens.
Mhm.
And we picked up and we moved halfway across country. And in the 2 years I did not have a practice, I was so misaligned. And we can talk about that a little bit later if you want to. I was so misaligned, I just could not stand myself. And like when I reopened here locally, it's been almost 2 years ago now. It's like things have just been
Mhm.
gradually building, and now I'm full time. As of 10 weeks ago, I'm full time in hypnosis, anesthesia, bye bye. And this is when you're aligned. It's a wonderful feeling. And I don't feel like I work anymore.
I
So
love that
that's the
so much.
best part.
Yes, and our the some of the listeners may know and some not that we are also in a group together, and oh my goodness, I've been able to kind of follow your journey a little bit, and it's been really really cool to kind of watch this all unfold and you really step in like fully to all of it. And you're right, the alignment piece. I feel like when you said like specifically about hypnosis, like why don't people know about this?
Yeah.
I That's exactly how I felt when I first kind of felt like I felt like I uncovered the keys to the kingdom with hypnosis, because I was like, to me, hypnosis is a way to get into alignment, is a way to kind of like
Yeah.
with what I do. I always talk about there's the stuff like this, the 3D stuff that goes one direction, and then there's the alignment piece that goes the other. And you have to have both kind of perfectly lined up. But hypnosis is a way I have found to get into alignment and to really fast track all the things. But it's so interesting that you're coming specifically from this medical background, because that's the other piece of this that I wanted to throw in is like, a lot of people I feel like think that hypnosis is this like new agey kind of thing. And I always just like die over that, because not only is it not new agey, like it's been around for ever, like, right? It's
Mhm.
like this ancient thing. But at the same time, and maybe you know more about dates, but there is all of this research with it. And then that, like,
Mhm.
even deeper than just every day using it for weight loss or whatever, there's medical research that talks about the, like you're saying, like the pain management and the and healing faster. And like this stuff is so mind blowing when you really get into it. Yeah. So
It, it
go ahead.
it is. No, it's amazing. There are tens of thousands of articles now
Hmm.
supporting hypnosis and suggestion and imagery. You won't always see it called hypnosis.
Right.
Um, in the way that it works in terms of medical benefit. Um, James Easdale in the 1800s I believe he was an English surgeon. He was in India, and he did thousands of operations using
Hmm.
hypnosis as a sole anesthetic. Some of them were major, most of them were minor. But in Europe, they will still perform surgery under hypnosis. Now, the person will receive sometimes light sedative or light pain medication, but we're talking surgeries that were typically done under general anesthesia here in the United States, along with all of the side effects that go along with that. They're doing it using a combination of hypnosedation, as some people will call it. I think somebody's actually trademarked that term, hypnosedation, but hypnosis for the sedation with a little bit of supplemental pain medication to go with it. And they're doing thyroidectomies, awake craniotomies. I mean, Imagine having brain surgery, just simply being blissed out. And that's exactly what it is when you're deep in hypnosis. You're
Yeah.
totally blissed out. I'm telling you, if we could teach teenagers how to go into a deep hypnotic state, nobody would ever experiment with drugs because it's
Right.
an amazing place to be.
I love that. I love that. You're exactly right. Like the term hypno junkie that has been thrown around, like true, guilty. Because you're right, it is a very blissed out feeling. So my mom recently had her rotator cuff. She had rotator cuff surgery.
Mhm,
And yeah, I made her do hypnosis before. And you mentioned this, I didn't get the full name, but Peggy something, but we didn't use that one, but we used another thing that was there's a before and an after
mhm.
um hypnotherapy stuff that she did. And she was able to get off her pain medication more quickly and, really start to begin to heal. And so it's just so fascinating and mind-blowing to me. And again, like I feel like it's part of my mission, and yours as well, probably, to tell people about it.
Yeah, I had a colleague, or an acquaintance rather, reach out to me when I was in Connecticut, and she came into my office one day. I was doing bookkeeping work. I had the door open. She came in. She's like, "Oh my God, Penny, I need your help. I need your help." And I can share this story because she wrote a very lengthy testimonial. So just for clarity purposes, and she told me that she was going to be having the surgery. It was going to be a 4-hour surgery. And she's like, I can't take anything without getting sick.
Mm.
Like any pain medicine, any sedation, any anesthesia just makes it work worse. I get so sick to my stomach. I just can't tolerate anything. And she said, they're going to admit me for 23 hours just for pain management. And she's like, I don't know what to do. So I gave her a CD with some relaxation stuff on it. And then I gave her a CD that had healing statements that she could listen to under anesthesia. And I sent her away with that. She had 2 weeks to prepare. She came to me 2 days before surgery. She goes, "Oh my God, I slept last night." She goes, "I should have started listening to this disc 2 weeks ago." And I'm like, What were you doing?" I'm like, "On your lunch break today, listen again. Listen tomorrow, at bedtime, listen at lunch tomorrow, listen." I'm like, when you cut that stress response, you're going to decrease your pain so much. And I happened to know who was going to be giving her anesthetic. So I made sure that she was going to have the healing statements played in headphones while she was asleep. She told me later that 20 minutes after her anesthetic, she was sitting up in recovery room. She was wide awake. She never felt like she had anesthesia. She had 1 dose of IV pain medication in that 23-hour admit. And the whole reason she was admitted was so she could receive multiple doses of IV pain
Wow.
medication, and she needed none of it. And
Wow.
she's like, I'm writing the CEO of the hospital. And I have this nice, long, lengthy testimonial. So it's been proven since the 80s. I want to say it was Kaiser Permanente out in California that actually supported some of the research, but there is a meta-analysis of studies from the 80s and 90s that was published in Anesthesia and Analgesia in 2002. And people who use some sort of visualization, imagery, suggestion, hypnosis immediately before, during, or after their procedure, 89% of them do better than people who did nothing. And I found it very interesting the way that they worded the results.
Yeah.
Instead of saying that, hey, you do this, you got an 89% greater chance of less pain medication, no nausea, vomiting, and quicker recovery, as opposed to doing nothing. And I found it interesting the way that they worded the results of the study, really not giving credit, just saying that, 89% of these people did better than these people over here. It was just kind of like, it's not a drug, it's not a medicine. Let's kind of low key it a little bit. At least that was
Right.
my impression. As a
Right.
healthcare professional, that was that was the impression I walked away with.
Yeah. You're like, why are you not saying, this is amazing? You should really be looking at this. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, it's just so amazing. So it's so amazing and so life changing and mind blowing that you wrote a book about it. So can you share a
I
little
did.
about your book, which I am reading, by the way. I just got it a couple days ago and I'm reading it, and already I'm just like, wow, because you have a lot of research and things in there as well. So,
Yeah. And when I wrote the book, I chose a niche that tends to be, um, for lack of a better word, they tend to be poo-pooed in the healthcare community.
right.
And that's, my specific target audience was women with fibromyalgia. And I've worked with many women who've reached out to me that are dealing with chronic pain issues. Maybe they reached out for a different issue, but through the process that I take them through and working through these other issues and just giving them some tools to use in their everyday life, their pain's gone away.
Mm.
And it's just really amazing to watch that happen, because fibromyalgia is a pain syndrome that starts in the brain. The pain is very physical. And I want to back up. Can I just back up just a second
Let's
about
back up.
pain in general?
Yes.
There is zero pain until your brain decides to allow you to have a pain experience.
Mm.
Even if you cut yourself, you break your arm or your leg, when the signals go to the brain, there is no awareness of pain until it goes through a processing within the subconscious mind, and then a signal is sent to what we call the somatosensory cortex, where you have the actual awareness of pain. And there are a lot of things that feed into this process. And a lot of people will say, oh, it's fibromyalgia, quote, it's all in their head. Well,
Mm.
all pain is in our head.
Ooh, great
And
distinction.
it's important for people to understand that. One of my clients, I do her case study in the last chapter of the book, because she's an example of someone that this is an ongoing lifetime process. It wasn't that quick elimination. And it's been over a year since I last worked with her, and she steadily improves day by day because she incorporates these things into her life. But she had chronic regional pain syndrome, and they can have some very interesting pain experiences where just, rubbing the hairs on the arm creates intense sensations of discomfort.
Mm.
And it's all medically defined in the literature. But again, people will say, oh, it's all in their head. So what becomes paramount, number one, is for someone suffering with chronic pain to recognize that you're diagnosed with, you don't have it,
Mm.
you don't own it. Just because it hasn't gone away yet does not mean that you have to live with it. When you open your mind to the possibility that you can feel better, you will feel better. And that's why the name of the book is Breaking the Fibro Code, Moving from Pain to Possibility, because there is that possibility. The other piece that's so frustrating for people with fibromyalgia is that people want to know, one, what causes it, and two, what's the cure. And there is no distinct cause. And they get told all the time, there's no cure, you have to learn to live with the pain,
Mm.
which is not true.
Mm.
You can learn to manage that. When you go through the book, you'll realize I don't guarantee anyone they'll be free of pain, but I put them on a path that allows them, one, to get some control of inflammation, to begin to see their life in a better light. And as you and I know, with the power of the mind and hypnosis, because you're NGH certified as well, our brain cannot tell the difference between real and imagined. So things begin to change in the brain when we visualize this improved life. And as we visualize this improved life and we allow ourselves to shift the way we think about our personal circumstance as something that we can have control of instead of something that's happening to us, then things begin to change. It gives you the power to say, okay, well, let me look at my diet. Maybe there's something, because some people it's their diet. Some people it's abuse and neglect. Some people have PTSD. Some people had a major surgery or accident. And then other people, maybe they can't pinpoint what it is. And they're like, you know what? I had a great life. I was always an overachiever. Well, what was the subconscious driver to being an overachiever? Because with the work that you and I have done in the coaching program that we're in together, there is usually some underlying subconscious drive that we have to prove that we are good enough when we're overachievers. And that creates stress in the subconscious mind. And the biggest pushback you get from people in this niche is that, like, well, I don't have stress. Well, most of our stress is completely unrecognized because it's subconscious.
Yes. Yes. It's so interesting talking about this, but kind of like a little offshoot of it is um, James Wedmore, who teaches about marketing. He always talks about the coach's curse because we're always speaking directly to the problem. But like you just said, most people aren't even aware that there's this deeper underlying issue. They're like, no, that's not my problem. This is my problem. So with marketing, it's like trying to figure out what people are identifying as their actual problem and issue, because you're right. It's so fascinating to me that most people aren't even aware that there's all these things happening below the surface in this unconscious way.
Hmm.
And so that's again, that's the power of hypnosis, is like, you don't have to know, you can be guided to it through this process.
Right. And even if it's weight loss or cigarettes, people think they know what caused their problem. It is very rarely the connection that the subconscious has made that ties the overeating or the binging or the sugar cravings or the have to have the cigarette. Rarely are we're aware of when we became aware of the symptom,
Mm.
because the overeating is a symptom. The overeating is not the problem. There's something else. And in my work that I do, because I use advanced techniques that go for the root cause, I don't treat symptoms.
Okay.
I eliminate root cause. And that's, there are a lot of different types of hypnosis out there. And so in my experience, I have found that the majority of the time, people are amazed when the dots line up and they connect them and they're like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
and then they feel better
And
because
then they can be
it's out
free.
of their life.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that so much. Yeah. So for the book, I mean, it is, like you said, it's for fibromyalgia, or people who have fibromyalgia or identify that way. But really, if you have any chronic pain of any kind, it can benefit you to read it and understand. You talk a lot about like the brain and how it processes, kind of like what you've gotten into some here, but there's a lot that goes on with that. So it can be for anyone experiencing any kind of
Yeah.
pain, right?
Exactly. And several of my beta readers told me, you need to market this book to anyone with chronic illness. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not how marketing works.
Right.
That's not how marketing works. And one of the reasons I chose fibromyalgia is because my mother, and I didn't connect these dots until a few months ago because I never understood why pain was so much my passion. And then it just kind of, my mother said something to me, and I'm like, you know what? I did not connect these dots.
Mm.
she used to have a huge stigma around pain because she had migraines back in the day that there was no Imitrex, Topamax, those kinds of things. And she would become so debilitated, she would have to be hospitalized to be given Demerol and medication for nausea because she would become dehydrated. And, you know, that stigma kind of followed her. I mean, eventually she did hypnosis, and
What?
I had forgotten about that. Her therapist did hypnosis with her and eliminated her migraines. She had dealt with them for over 20 years. And I had totally forgotten about it. Like it was in here somewhere going around in my head.
Obviously. Yes.
But, you know, being a woman and being told it's in your head, being told that you make it up,
Mm.
and also within chronic pain, almost everybody, not everyone, but almost everybody with chronic pain has some emotional component because chronic pain, you know, you can't do everything that you want to do. You can become frustrated. You can become angry. Maybe you lost your job. There's always an emotional component that needs to be addressed. But working with people with fibromyalgia allows me to marry the systematic approach I use in advanced techniques with the direct suggestion of hypnosis for pain
Mm.
to bring them a more fully, um, uh, I don't know, it's a more complete
Mm.
relief.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked again. I just love to talk about pain.
Well, first of all, I think that's really cool story that you can connect like your passion for this to something like that, and then also connect it to the fact that hypnosis helped your mother. Like that is so amazing and so huge. And you're, yeah, like of course that would give you a passion for
Yeah.
helping other people with their pain, and clearly it has been a driver for you, you know, for a long time, like you said, even unconsciously. So wow, I think that's really like you need to highlight that somewhere. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
it's funny when my mother mentioned it and the light bulb started going off. I thought, okay, this is something people can connect to because a lot of people in chronic pain, and particularly fibromyalgia, I immersed myself in the groups to really understand the difficulties and the challenges. And it's not just women with fibromyalgia. Give the guys out there a fair shake. Um, Men experience it as well, but women are the ones that are more likely to be told that they're too stressed, this or that. And I also think women are more likely to seek out assistance for it than men are, which might be a reason that men are underdiagnosed. And where was I going with that thought? Hello.
I do that all the time, all the time.
Don't you love that? So yeah, I don't know where I was going.
But
Next
you're right.
question.
So, yeah. Well, no, on that point a little bit, I know someone, a man who struggles with fibromyalgia, and I can recognize a lot of what you're saying in seeing his journey. And you know, for so long he's just told like it's in your head and all these things. He's tried everything. And recently I've kind of been putting the like hypnosis bug in his ear. But it's so interesting how, and this is what I mean, I feel like there can be such a stigma around it, because he's like, I don't know, it's almost like people have to lose all hope before they go into sometimes, not
Eh,
all people. And I do
yeah,
think there is getting to be more of an awareness around it, and it is becoming a little bit more mainstream. But there's still this stigma around hypnosis, and that's why I feel so passionate like you about
yeah,
breaking this down a little bit and being like, no, like you're the guy, like you and I are just the guide.
yeah,
They are the ones like doing the work, and there's yeah.
exactly. And that's where I was going to go with that. Is there people who are on Facebook and other social media, they're very skeptical when someone comes to them and says, I have something that can help you,
Yes.
because there are a lot of people out there who are pushing multi-level marketing they're pushing vitamin pills, they're pushing CBD oil, and I'm not knocking CBD oil because I have my mother on it right now. That's a whole nother story, for another day. There are things that work, but people are being inundated
Yeah.
with this sticky, yucky, in my Facebook Messenger, "Hey, I know you're having pain, let me help." And they're just they're so done with it. They're like, "Just leave me alone. Forget about it." So there's lack of trust because either they find doctors who understand and they have a great rapport with their doctor, or they find a doctor who kind of gets it, but isn't someone who's very knowledgeable about it and interpreting the research in a way that can help the patient, or they have somebody who's a doctor and says, yeah, just get stress out of your life, go on. You need to exercise, lose 100 pounds, whatever the case may be. So there's this whole spectrum. Doctors, nurses, they're all human, just like the rest of us. So you could reach any range of provider, and depending on what experience someone has had, it's definitely going to color their openness to what other people have to offer, because they have been burned before and they don't want to be burned again. They've been hurt enough.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's why someone like you, who is a trustworthy person and has this experience in, the medical field, is such a powerful combination, because people might be a little more willing to trust your
Yeah.
perspective and what you're saying to them, because you have this a background, and that's part of why I even was like, oh, I got to get Penny on the podcast, because I do appreciate that perspective, and I do feel like this is such a healing tool for people, that I want more people to be able to understand what it is, and realize all the different ways that it can help you in your life. And I keep saying over and over again that, like, instead of there's an app for that, there's a hypnosis for that.
Yes.
Because right, because it can help in so many different things, because of exactly what you said earlier, that it gets to that root cause that we're often unaware is even the root cause. We just know we have this problem, or this is the
Yeah.
area we're struggling in, or whatever it is. But it's like, this is a way to really address those underlying things. So yeah.
Yeah. And really, it's not even just chronic pain
Right.
or fibromyalgia. Only 2% of disease is due to heredity. Uh, it's hereditary.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So that means that the other 98% is based on how our environment, external and internal, influences our genetic expression. And we don't know what combination of genes in our life we're going to turn on and off, but they've shown that asthma is influenced by stress and the stress response, and by using hypnosis and other techniques, you can create a different environment in the body that allows those symptoms to reverse. Type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease. I mean, the list just really goes on and on. And, you know, I, we should start being taught when we're in kindergarten
Mm-hmm.
how to use our mind in visualization to feel good, to see ourselves healthy, to see ourselves as we want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and then to just be that way. And we're not. So
That's right. Well, unless you're my son. Which actually I will have to do. I actually thought about this earlier, because I'm actually gonna hop in our group that we're in together in just a little bit, to talk about how my son healed from asthma. And so I'm gonna do a podcast on that, because now that we've really gotten into this, I'll have people listen to this first, and then they can come and listen to that one, um, because it really, I think this is the other reason, like, it means so much to me, is it's helped
mhm.
me so much in my life, and clear away just trash that was in there that didn't need to be in there. But then, like you're saying, like, now I can give this back to my son and I can teach him how to use the power of his mind and
Yeah.
heal from these like patterns that come up. And that's what I kind of identified in him, is that and it was stress related and it was anxiety related for him, and in many ways there's other things too, but once I kind of identified that it was this pattern that was happening for
Mm-hmm.
him, I was able to help heal that. And he did it, right? Like I was a guide, but he did it all. Like he's the one that
Yeah.
chose that. I couldn't do that part for him. So again, it's just us being these guides, but I'm really passionate about teaching him now how powerful he is to create what he wants to see in the world.
Exactly.
And that starts, like, that's why this podcast, although I'm thinking of changing the name because nobody really fully understands what I mean by inner beauty, but this is what I mean. Like you said, your environment, there's the physical environment, but there's an inner environment that we have to pay attention to.
Yep.
And that's what I mean by inner beauty, is like the inner environment that we neglect, and
Exactly.
often we neglect. And so this is a way that people can tune back into that and tune back into themselves and heal the things that have maybe been with us for a long time that we're ready to release. We're ready to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way. So this was a beautiful conversation. Tell me, first of all, tell the listeners, how can they get your book? And let's say they're ready to deal with their pain or something else. Like, how can they work with you other than the book? But also I want people to go get your book because, like I said, I'm reading it and it's
Yep.
really good and has a lot of the research and why this is so powerful.
Yeah, so the book is called Breaking the Fibro Code, Moving from a Life of Pain to Possibility, and it is still just 99 cents on
99
Kindle.
cents. Come on.
99 cents. Anybody can afford 99 cents. I'll send you $1 if you need it.
Same. I'm making this offer as well. If you want this book and you don't have 99
So,
cents,
yeah, go to Amazon. You don't have if you don't have a Kindle, you can get the app for your phone. So you don't have to have a Kindle to read the book. So yeah, it's on Amazon. I'm not sure when the price will go up, but at least through the new year, it's going to be at 99 cents. And if you're interested in working with me, there are two ways to work with me. One is I do one-on-one sessions, and you can learn more about that at www.pennychiasson.com. And I also offer a mind, body, spirit self-hypnosis workshop. It's an 8-week workshop. It's taught live. There are no recordings. And you incrementally build upon the practice. And it's a process of a clearing of negativity and then building yourself up spiritually. And you don't have to have any specific belief in, any specific religion. It's just a spiritual belief, whatever it is that you identify with that's greater than you. It's about finding your purpose in this life and connecting with that purpose and moving to living in a state of gratitude, which is great for your body and your inner beauty.
Ooh, I like the way you brought that full circle.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you for this conversation and for what you're doing in the world. I'm so grateful that you were here today. And I'm just grateful to know you and get to connect with you.
It's awesome. The connections that we have made over the last year have been amazing. And it's great to know you and to just be a part of the process. So thanks so much for having me. I appreciated being able to talk about my passion.
Yes, love it. All right. Thank you.